Welcome to Spirit of Film Conversations. This is Randall, Libero, and thanks for tuning in to the Seventh Wave Network in our program this week. We have an amazing movie to tell you about. It's a film that's just opening in the U.S. The film is called Water, and it's a documentary that's all about water in our world, whether it's on the planet, in ourselves. And we have with us today Melissa Henderson, who's representing Intention Media, the distributor of the film. And also, I think on the line is my fellow filmmaker, producer, director, David Sereda. So, Melissa and David, are you with us?
Thank you for having us.
Hi. David, are you there? Okay, well, we'll get David in just a second. Well, Melissa, this film came to your company, and this is actually the first film that Intention Media is distributing.
It is our first film, and we're very fortunate to have a very wonderful film to start out with. As you know, Water, we had a special screening the other day in Tempe, and it was very well received. And we're opening Harkins Valley Art on February 22nd. So,
and you're opening in the same theater that What the Bleep opened just almost 4 years ago and became a sensation.
We are. We're very lucky to know Dan Harkins, and he's willing to take another round with a new film, and hopefully it'll be as much as a success as a Bleep was in Arizona, and then move on to other states around the country.
Well, I'd like to tell people as they're listening to the program today where they can find out more information online, which will obviously be helpful to tell you about the film. Mm-hmm. The motion picture site is waterthemovie.com, and that's where you can find out more. Also, you can go to my website, spiritoffilm.net, and we have lots of links there, including Professor Roy and David Sereda's and Intention Media's links are all on my website. So the movie, I just really want to get into what this is. It reveals a lot of very breathtaking scientific discoveries by researchers worldwide, especially a lot of researchers in Russia, and it takes a very in-depth look into water as the driving force in all nature, as Leonardo da Vinci said, and it explores how human intentions not only change the structure of water, but how our thoughts can alter our environment. And I was surprised to understand that water is one of the most amazing yet least studied substances. And there's so many scientists in the film that have gone into very in-depth research, and they've tried to understand its explicit and implicit properties, which are phenomenal. It's beyond the common physical laws of nature in all areas of life. And one of the most amazing discoveries is that water actually has memory, which I want to ask Professor Roy about as soon as he gets back on the line here. Mm-hmm. So, with your company, tell me a little bit about Intention Media and its goals for this film, and what are you hoping to do? What audience are you hoping to reach with it?
Well, Betsy Chassie and I, we formed Intention Media because we felt there was a need to deliver more of these inspirational stories of personal courage, and water is actually a very powerful example of a way we can make a social change to affect this element we rely so heavily on, and so through the scientific breakthroughs in the film and all this, it definitely fits into the types of film that Intention Media is trying to deliver. So we hope that it's well received, and we hope that it carries throughout the rest of our country, and hopefully we can take it even further than that. So the film was made in Russia, and by a very amazing producer, and she's very excited to bring the film to the United States.
Yeah, the producer's name is, I'm not sure if I can pronounce this correctly. It's Sereda Medvedeva?
Yes, it's Sereda.
Sereda, okay.
you.
All right. I just want to say, if anyone's listening to us in Russia, because we are global, hello to all of our fellow comrades over there in the other part of the world. I think Professor Roy, are you with us? Is he on the line right now?
Yes, he is.
Ah, there you are. Okay. Well, first of all, let me introduce you, Professor Rustum Roy, who appears in the film. He's a visiting distinguished professor at Arizona State University and a visiting professor of medicine at University of Arizona. Well, Professor Roy, we saw you the other evening, and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You are one of a group of amazing scientists who have taken a fresh look at water and its implications for humanity and our planet today. Tell us a little bit about what you feel were some of the most amazing discoveries that are talked about in the film about water.
Well, Randall, I'm going to tell you even one beyond that, because they're coming back in a couple of weeks to do the filming on this. Let me start with that and work backwards, right?
Okay, go ahead.
A new discovery made a few months ago only by a radio engineer without a PhD or anything like that was that you can burn water. Everyone has seen it on YouTube. But we have confirmed that, and it's gone much further. The extraordinary discovery by an observant engineer in Erie, Pennsylvania, that you can literally burn water by putting it in a very weak radiation field. The same thing that you're using now in radio, right? The same radio beams.
Right.
That's a very weak beam.
This energy is not harmful to human tissue. I mean, I was just amazed by that. And actually on your website, and if everybody wants to go to that, it's there's a link on spiritofilm.net, but also Rustum Roy, that's RUSTUMROY.com. And there's a link at the bottom of the page where you can actually get right to the YouTube video that Professor Roy is referring to. So continue.
Well, I think that that surprises the whole world of science to the extent that people cannot believe it. And I think that it's a great tragedy in modern science, because one of the great points about a water movie, it is something that connects to all human beings. I'm very concerned about science education. I've been doing it for the high school teachers and the kids in school. We got to have them touch something, not abstract stuff. Water is something we use daily, and to introduce students to the intrigue of modern science through stuff like water is a great way. And I was very proud that the Russian colleagues in that movie, they're very distinguished scientists, really have gone out of their way to make these social links. But to return to burning of water, that really, it's like Röntgen's discovery of X-rays. Nobody wants to believe it except a commercial guy who can make money out of it. And the scientists are still waiting around. No, I think that it's going to be a very big, important thing. But in the movie, you see the other major applications of pure, very nearly pure water in antibiotics. You see it in all kinds of health effects, and many of them are being exploited now, are starting to work up in good old Phoenix. There are people here looking at the health effects of water as a major, this is one of the major sites, Utah, Phoenix, Arizona, and looking at the effects of very pure water with tiny, tiny amounts of specific phases, specific solids, like metallic silver, like metallic gold. The inventor of this burning, Mr. Kanzius, is working at the University of Texas, the great MD Henderson Center on Cancer, through heating these little particles of gold in water inside the human body. Just what you said, that it doesn't harm the human body. So it's a very interesting new development which will add to the great stuff shown in the movie. And the most interesting ones there are what you call subtle energies and thought, and which up to now we in the scientific world tend to say, oh, that's a lot of monkey shines and it can't be true. But now slowly, if you can use a radio wave to burn water, why shouldn't a human intention or a thought change water? as you see the evidence for it in the movie.
Well, since we are mostly water, watching the film, the thought that occurred to me was, if we can project thought, and thought is energy, and it takes on some form, then what we're comprised mostly of is water. So if we're projecting that thought, and we're projecting it possibly through the structure of our water in our bodies and in our brain, then that thought projection may carry a signature message that actually connects to water in some form. When I look at Dr. Emoto's work, I think there's got to be a thread there somewhere. It can't just be a thought wave. There's got to be a connection, like the water in our bodies is talking to the water in the glass. Is that what you think may be happening?
Yes, let me give you a little subtle improvement on that. You said water, thought may be energy. Well, thought may contain, we call it a scalar quantity. But when you have intention, in the Emoto experiments, those people are projecting that thought. Remember, they're saying, they're projecting love or whatever, hatred or something onto the water or the crystal or something. The music is sending a signal. It's a vector quantity. So human intentions, which comprise the sending of thought, so take the word sending, right? It's a vector. You're sending it out in a direction. And it looks like that simply seems to do something in many fields, not only in water, but the sending of thoughts now become a very important issue, which everybody, Rupert Sheldrake and his crowd have been talking about the potential of telepathy and doing it in scanning of passengers at airports and so on. It is not any longer something to be laughed at and to have some characters calling themselves something busters, that they can say, oh, that's all nonsense. You notice the quality of the scientists. What amuses me is the skeptics are largely not particularly interesting scientists of any caliber, but these are distinguished scientists on that movie. Martin Chaplin in London, the leading scientist of water in the world, without any peer. He talks about the memory of water. Now, I'm amused that scientists who never read a paper in the field are all certain that this can't be true. That's very bad science. So you see the quality of the people. You see 2 or 3 Nobel laureates on there. You see Professor Voikov at Moscow State University. You see Professor Ilyushin, one of the greatest water scientists in the world.
Right. These are very, very distinguished scientists in all over the world, especially several from Russia,
right?
Who are very
but not only Russia.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's researchers and scientists from several different countries: Kazakhstan, Switzerland, right. Israel, Britain, Austria, Japan, Argentina, China. They're from all over the world.
Correct. So these scientists have really been looking at the subtle parts of water, the cutting edge of science. That's what real scientists do, is go to the cutting edge. This movie is about the cutting edge of the relationship of science to nature, but as well as to humankind. And that's the wonderful part of, and I'm very proud of Kathy and all, that they are really taking the energy and the risk to move this out to the public. And that is the way the public gets educated into science, not only by sitting in classrooms and sometimes feeling very bored.
Well, I can tell. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old, 2 children, and I'm looking to get them interested in science. And of course, we show documentaries and different things about everything from nature to space and animals and all that. But I really feel that just like the space program did in the 60s, there needs to be some push to get kids excited about science again. And this is physical science. This is like you can put your hands on it, which is what's great.
We call it material science. These are real rocks. Arizona is full. The whole industry of Arizona, the gold mines and the copper mines and all the building around here, that's concrete stuff. It should be the vehicle for connecting to, Leonardo did this too, connect to the mind through the touch senses.
Right. Well, I want to bring on my fellow filmmaker, David Sereda. Dave, are you with us?
Yeah, I am.
Hi. Hi, I'm glad you got in on the call, because David was, as far as my understanding, the story that you told at the screening on Monday, you kind of discovered this film from where it was just kind of languishing in someone's computer. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, I was in the middle of filming my new film, The Voice, and we were in Taos, New Mexico last summer, and we were doing an experiment with an East Indian American researcher named Krishna Madappa, who was a research fellow and partner of Konstantin Korotkov, who is also in water, a Russian physicist who had a near-death experience and wanted to be able to prove deeper levels of the spiritual realms. And he develops what's called the GDV camera system, which is an extension of Kirlian photography, which Kirlian photography was the first photographic evidence that all living things had fields or auras, colors radiating off the body. And then later, Fritz Popp, a German scientist in the 1970s, actually proved that all living things were emitting biophotons, which means living light waves coming off of all living things. So Konstantin's camera had the ability to see the human aura not just as a picture, but as information contained in the picture itself, in the biophotons themselves. So we were filming an experiment where we were doing 3 different types of meditation, and we had a glass of water in front of us, and this machine could not only measure all of our auras, the amplitude, which means the amount or quantity of energy coming out of all 7 of our energy centers before and after the different meditations, but we also measured the changes in the water. But very different from the experiments in water, we had no intention with the water. We just simply meditated. The water was in the room. And the coherency and the structure of the water improved dramatically after a total of about 4 hours of meditation. So we were filming this, and Krishna Madappa said, we have this, I have this film from Russia called Water, and it's in my computer, and he started showing me small segments of it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Look at this film. And he said, nobody would be interested in this film in America. Americans watch different things on television. And I said to him, well, do you know about the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, which of course was produced and directed by Betsy Chase and the other producers of The Bleep, and how much that affected Americans and Canadians and Europeans. And he said, well, this movie Water is very, very sophisticated, and nobody would be interested. And I said, no, I want to see it. And then, Krishna went to sleep on it. We got involved in producing the film. And then eventually I said, I want to see the whole movie. So finally Krishna came to my home in in Sedona, Arizona. We watched the whole film, and I said, we got to get this film in America. So I contacted the producers in Russia, Saida Medvedeva, and I ended up getting several copies of the film, and we did test screenings in Sedona to 150 people, and people went crazy. Every time I asked a crowd of people, how many do you think that millions of Americans would want to see this film, and they all raised their hands. And incidentally, in Russia, this film sold 3 million DVDs. It's like God in Russia. They bootleg copies on the street. It eventually made its way onto Russian television. And when I thought that the Russians were not only the very fact that they were watching this kind of stuff in television, but this was their iconic film in their culture, and we were watching phenomenon on the more kind of pop psychic stuff on TV, I felt very similar to how a lot of American scientists felt in the Cold War, and in the development of the atomic bomb, is the Russians are ahead of us. We're falling asleep. And at the end of the Cold War, a lot of their scientists started working on consciousness on a very, very profound level, not on a superficial level. And we have scientists working in the field of consciousness studies in America, but our media doesn't cover it. So what we were doing when we were filming The Voice is we were developing a film that shows how not only how we're affecting reality, but what are we affecting reality with? We're affecting reality with information. Consciousness is almost like, you could put it in a language, like when Emoto places the 3 vials of water and rice in the film Water in front of us, and one of the vials of rice, he says thank you. He's very grateful. And the other one he says, "You idiot." And the third one, he just ignores it. And after 1 month, the rice that was acknowledged and blessed was fruitful, and it was fermenting. It was still white. It had a pleasant aroma. The second vial had mold and kind of grime growing around it, the one he said, "I hate you." And the one he ignored was pretty bad, too. So the question is, how is this happening? How are we giving these instructions to reality? And what's exciting about water to me is, firstly, we see the evidence and the very strong case. If you think of a court case, you go into a room, in a courtroom, and you have the antithesis to the argument, and you have the case. And in this case, the evidence for consciousness affecting reality, affecting atomic structures, is overwhelming. And second, the fact that our thoughts are shape-shifting and changing the structure of the very fluid that we're all contained in, we were all enveloped in during the 9 months in the womb, and our planet is 2/3 of. We are affecting it, which means it actually has memory. And what physicists are finding now on the quantum level is that information is a higher authority than chemistry. It's a higher authority than almost anything. In fact, it looks like consciousness, information, is stored in water and possibly stored in the atom itself, which means that everything historically that is going on the planet is being stored somewhere. It's being stored in a memory vessel. And this leads to the possibility that the idea that all history is stored accurately in the atom, that's what's one of the most exciting things for me is, means that one day we might be able to extract real, accurate history out of the atom, out of water. And then ultimately the fact that the film proves that we can restructure water holistically, that we can, and by ingesting this restructured water, as American scientist Perla demonstrates, that the buoyancy and the energy of blood cells becomes dramatically improved just from a person drinking restructured water, ultimately means that water restructured could become the ultimate medicine. It's like the next level in homeopathy. Good. Homeopathy is vibrational medicine. So I'm so excited about this film, and when I'm watching it, I watch it like 5 times, and I'm always getting something new out of it. And to think that there's part 2 and part 3 coming is just very, very exciting. I mean, people really are going to love this film.
Yeah, I want to get back to the part 2 and part 3, but Professor Roy, you mentioned something the other night in the audience about homeopathy. Can you let us repeat that comment, please?
Let me go back. I think we've got to honor David for what he's done to really bring this to the American people. And he ended on a theme which is the crux of the matter. And the crux of the matter is, it is the structure of a liquid which really is everything is told, not by the composition. The homeopathy critics have based their case for nearly 200 years on saying if you diluted the water so far that there's not a single molecule left beyond the Avogadro limit, well, how the hell can it do any good? That was a simplistic but incorrect critique of the theme of homeopathy, that we can imprint homeopathic remedies with some kind of information by whatever remedy we put in, and so on, and that nobody could believe, first, that you can change water, that water can actually have different structures, and second, that structure can last, have a memory, right? Those are the 2 themes which what I call the revolution of 2007, even beyond that movie's making, have totally been established as fact. So the homeopathy critics are on the ropes. They're now trying to recover from the fact that their central argument, you cannot have a difference. Yes, you can. There are hundreds of structures of water recognized by all the physicists, the top physicists, top chemists, material scientists. Yes, there are many structures. B, that you can retain them. So those 2 now have destroyed the critique of homeopathy. And I think the question that David has been saying over there, the more important, more difficult one to establish scientifically for the critics will be, how can we prove that thoughts and intentions and these subtle vectors can actually, the meditators sitting around the table, Professor Tiller in Payson, Arizona, has been working on this for a long time on showing that the pH of the water changes, that the magnetic properties change, and so that people don't even think about these new ways in human interactions with matter. This is really the cutting edge. In thinking, we've been talking about that can thoughts actually change matter. David is a believer. He thinks consciousness is a force. And the quantum mechanicians, Professor Dürr, Professor Heisenberg, and all those were talking about this. When most people miss it in our quantum mechanics, we never teach that other part. We teach the part where we do it to change the color of the light bulbs and all that stuff. But we don't teach them that there is a part of quantum mechanics which is in this fuzzy area which we don't like to tread into, and that is what the world is entering. And I think movies like The Water make it much more tangible than we've had for 50 years, because this is touching something, as we're all saying, that affects everybody all the time and all over the world. So it's a very nice interface between the new realities, the subtle realities which we are embedded in.
Wow. I think, do you feel that we have just a couple of minutes before break, and I just want to get a comment from you, Professor Roy, do you think we're on the sort of the verge of a scientific revolution in terms of discoveries and application, especially in the United States and just kind of all over the world, but is there something happening here in our country that's moving things in that direction or not?
Well, I think that yes. Why? Because now it is no longer defensible to decry it. And I gave you the illustration of the burning of water. That is like Mr. Röntgen's discovery of X-rays. Nobody could believe it. The scientific community refused to believe it for a couple of years. In the meantime, there were people in Amsterdam and London selling devices to look through your hands. So it is now the breakthrough point at which something has become so obvious now that there is something new on the horizon that I think we could be at that tipping point. But I must say with great sadness that we in this country are the last to climb on board with our water work. We are getting billionaires from all over the world, all of the Gulf states, all over Venezuela, from Indonesia, are all fascinated and willing to put their money down on this new water burning stuff. And from the U.S. Department of Energy, there is total silence. So we have to say...
very unfortunate.
I hope the water movie will do it, David.
Well, yeah, me so too. Well, we're going to take a break here for a couple of minutes. Everyone sit tight, stay by your computers or your iPods or however you're listening to us. And we have some amazing things to talk about in the next half hour. Stay tuned. The Spirit of Film Conversations will be back right after this break. Hang on, everybody.
Awakened media for a transforming world. Seventh Wave Network.
Dad, can I ask you something?
Sure.
There's this girl I kind of like.
Say no more. You just have to impress her.
Okay, but how?
Just, I don't know, pick up a lot of heavy things around her.
Like what?
You know, desks, chairs, people. Grunt if you have to.
Grunt?
Yeah, be like, oh! There you go.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. When you adopt a child from foster care, just being there makes all the difference. To learn more, call 1-888-200-4005. A public service announcement brought to you by Adopt U.S. Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
The last great frontier is the magnificent mystery of the mind. Abundant evidence demonstrates that we have far more talents than we realize, and that our minds are exceptional instruments we can learn to use more fully. Just as we learn to play a piano or a clarinet. Tune in to the music of your mind, Living the Extraordinary, Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Seventh Wave Network, and learn more about how you can hear the wonderful music of your mind.
Create a life with growth, balance, abundant peace of mind, and joy. Tune in and call into Spirits Evolving with pragmatic psychic and certified hypnotherapist Lee Channing. By using the simple tools for growth offered by Lee, including intuition, color awareness, creative visualization, and more, build a stronger understanding of your own energy and offer clear, unencumbered energy to those with whom you share your life, whether for an individual or a business, home environment, or your office. Lee evaluates and interacts with the energy at hand, providing an analysis of the problem and a description of the options available to move forward successfully and with grace. Spirits Evolving with Lee Channing broadcast each Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern on the Seventh Wave Network, your online community for positive change. Spirits Evolving, your guide toward a life filled with more balance, intention, and contentment.
Reiki, Balancing Form and Essence, hosted by Reiki Master Phyllis Lee Furamoto, brings to the Seventh Wave Network this worldwide human art form. Join Phyllis every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time as she shares her experiences from around the globe and helps you to understand the effects of living in conscious relationship with the energy of Reiki. Reiki, Balancing Form and Essence, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific Time on the Seventh Wave Network.
Taking you to the threshold of a dream and beyond. Seventh Wave Network.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Spirit of Film Conversations. I'm your host, Randall Libero. We're talking today about an amazing new documentary just being released in the United States for the very first time, a film called simply Water. It's starting here in Arizona on the 22nd of this month. And Melissa, are you still there with us on the line?
I'm still here.
Okay. The film's distributor is Intention Media. And Melissa, your partner in Intention Media is Betsy Chassie, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. And she was one of the co-producers of the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? Just so everyone remembers that. This film has the potential of being as revolutionary as What the Bleep was in quantum physics as this is in physical science. We were just talking with Professor Rustum Roy, who will be returning shortly with us. What do you think is the sort of feel that you're looking at in terms of marketing this to the American public? Because it's a very straightforward documentary, but it's the content is so absolutely amazing and breathtaking. How do you think that audiences will respond to the film?
Well, I think once they see the film, that they're going to be able to go home and implicate some of the research that has been found into their own lives. Masaru Emoto is also in the film Water, and as you know, he was also in What the Bleep. And I have witnessed, since What the Bleep was released, the amazing trend of blessing your water. And this film really shows the science behind our intentions on water and how our thoughts affect it and how water has memory. And so I think the film is just really important in reiterating that we really do have an effect on the substance. So we are also opening, I wanted to mention, in Olympia, Washington next month in March, and in Portland, Oregon on March 21st. And just a note, March 22nd is World Water Day, so hopefully we can bring attention to the film during this great event. There's local events happening in many cities regarding water, and so we're very excited, and we really hope that it touches as many people as the Bleep did.
Well, if you please make sure that you put those other release dates on your website. Are they on there already for those other cities?
One of them just went up, and the other one will be being added shortly. The news is coming in as we speak, sort of. So.
All right. Well, that's
moving quick.
Right, that's the way it is with the film's release. Everything happens sort of as it happens. Waterthemovie.com is a website. We're also going to be rejoined here by my fellow filmmaker, producer, director, David Sereda, and also Professor Rustum Roy, I think, is back on the line with us.
Yes,
great. Okay. Well, David, I want to just catch up with you for another comment here on When the film was taken from how you found it to its current form, were there any changes made to it at all?
Very subtle changes were made. I think for the American market, there are Intention Media and my company, Voice Entertainment, working together to try to make it in the best form for the American audience. I mean, I love the film as it is. What excites me about science and spirituality merging together is that, firstly, spiritual mystics have been having not only experiences, but the attainment of authentic enlightenment. And the fact that science is merging with spirituality means the science gives us a repeatable, reliable model that we can follow. For example, when you start your car, it starts almost every time, if it's in working condition. If you turn on your computer, your cell phone, your laptop, it works. And the reason it works is because scientists know how to map forward and backwards until they perfect the understanding of nature. Science is really the understanding of nature, what is actually occurring. And what's exciting about spirituality and science merging is you can see repeatably how nature is actually operating, how consciousness plays a role, one of the most important roles in creation of our lives, of our thoughts, of our success, of our failures, of our relationships, of our moods. And if you can see that repeatable model in action, and you can understand it, you can know yourself at a much more authentic level. You're not just guessing. You're not just intuiting, well, I think my thoughts might be affecting my life, but I don't really know. Or what are the more deeper question is, what are the instructions in conscious language are we giving ourselves that causes our sufferings and our failures and our successes and our joy and our bliss? And the idea of science merging here, once again, is we can see with these extensions of the Kirlian photography effect in the GDV camera, which is not only used to test water, plants and flowers and other living things, but human beings. We can see visually in a formula and in a model where what we are doing in ourselves is really working. And that's what is exciting about the film Water and The Voice coming up, is that we're marrying these two fields together, not just for, are we going to prove a conscious universe? Are we going to understand how a conscious universe works? That's the deeper question. Because if you know how something works, your car will start every time, your cell phone will work every time. Now, if you can know how to heal yourself with water in a repeatable model, it's amazing in the film Water. You have Nobel Prize winner Kurt Yertik, from Switzerland. He's one of my favorite personalities in the film. Emoto, Pearl LaPearl, Effie Chow. You have all these professionals who unanimously agree, is the key word, that this is really happening, that our consciousness is not just affecting reality, but we're actually starting to find out how it operates so that we can repeat the model. And if you can repeat the model, you're going to get the same results every time. So if you want to heal yourself, ultimately, you'll find a system that really, really works. It's reliable, is turning on your car. And that's what this means. So when you watch the film Water, you're going to the next level after seeing What the Bleep Do We Know. Which is an iconic film, a film that was a landmark, that really gave people a picture of how consciousness is cooperatively affecting reality. But now you're getting deeper into how it actually works. And ultimately where Water goes is, as Rustum Roy is talking about, is it may be that there is a cheaper way to make hydrogen, the most abundant fuel in the universe, and water may actually play. In fact, this is a really big question because I worked in the nuclear fusion field for 10 years. I spoke in Congress in 1993 on nuclear fusion in a huge panel in the House Subcommittee on Energy and Technology. And fusion was our biggest hope for clean environmental energy in America. And in fact, most of the funding that has gone into fusion has mostly failed. Tokamak, which is a Russian-American joint effort at Princeton, has monopolized most of the funding. They have had some success there, but they haven't produced more energy than break even very efficiently. So what I'm excited about now is we're looking at the possibility that the sun, which is fusing helium and hydrogen, hydrogen and manufactures helium, which are the lightest elements in the universe, but it's doing it at a temperature far lower than the tokamak fusion reactor, which produces temperatures over 100 million degrees. The core of the sun is not really that hot. There's different strata of the sun. But I'm looking at the idea from studying NASA's sound of the sun wave files that the sun is using sound and harmonics to restructure hydrogen in a different formula so that it can cause fusion to happen at a lower temperature. Now, essentially what Rustum Roy just said, this new discovery about burning water with very low frequency energy waves, is kind of in the similar ballpark. It's a similar discussion. Is it possible that particular frequencies and restructuring hydrogen in the correct sequences and orders is the real secret to fusion and burning hydrogen efficiently? Now, that is really exciting. That is where I really wish Hillary Clinton and Obama and McCain and all of these presidential candidates were watching films like this, staying on the cutting edge and knowing where research funding really needs to go, because the work that Rustum Roy is doing is so profound, and many of the other researchers in the film. And ultimately where this could possibly lead is cheap, affordable nuclear fusion power that is environmentally benign. And I think that's where it's going.
David, it's very strange that you bring in the nuclear fusion. I didn't know of your connection to that. As a matter of fact, I should tell you that the group that has paid most attention to our work is, guess what, the biggest nuclear fusion group in the world today. That is in Japan now.
Mm-hmm.
The tokamaki are more or less shut down.
Right,
but
yeah.
in Japan, Professor Motojima, who is the Director General of the National Institute on Fusion Science, was told by the Prime Minister, the last Prime Minister, Koizumi of Japan, look, we've been wasting money on you guys for 40 years. Now I want you to save some energy. So they said, find something and give me in 3 years a report, and can you really save a lot of energy? Guess what they turned to? Our work on microwaves.
Wow.
At Penn State. They came in there, offered us $1 million a year for 11 years. This is all the resonance with microwaves. He was in the room, by the way, when we found out about the water burning. So they are very clued up on saying there is something new. It is not hot fusion, it is not cold fusion, but there are new phenomena. They're connected to the word resonance. And the word resonance is something like a black hole in physics. They ignore it. But the National Institute on Fusion Science has repeated our work, taken it much further, and I think there is we don't get that hopeful. David was giving far too much credit to science. I mean, we are not that worthy. And the cars work, but that's because of good engineering, not science. The science is like the theology part. It's not what you do. It's not the religion part, your good practices. It is more the theory and the story behind it. And that's what we concoct, we professionals in that game. But the nuclear fusion guys saw an opportunity here in Japan.
Wow.
Amazingly, not a single person in 10 years, we did that work in about 10 years ago now, and not one person in the entire U.S. establishment has ever contacted, although they paid for the work. The Defense Department pays for all my work. But there we are, we sat there for years, and the Japanese came in, took that work in the Nash, and they made it all over Japanese industry now. They've got it throughout industries, saving enormous amounts of energy. Think of the energy saving which they have instituted. Toyota, Kyocera, all the little metallurgy companies are using that same principle right now as we speak.
Wow.
And we are hoping Arizona is going to lead the way in that, to pick up this idea that use microwaves, use radio waves in a resonant mode to change matter.
All right, let's talk about, since we're right on that conversation right now, what makes sense to people is, okay, all the science is great, this works, that functions. Let's talk about the word application.
Yep.
So we're going to do something with this research and apply it. What kinds of things can be built? What kind of energy devices, vehicles, buildings, what will come of this, do you think, in the kind of the first, second, third stages of this, and both Professor Roy and David both offer your side of that question. Professor Roy, you can start.
Well, I think that first, Randall, it's a slow process. From any new science, it takes years and years to come to a technology. The microwave stuff, which is exactly analogous to this, is about 10 years old now, and I guess that it took them about 3 years to make it into every major materials industry. That means you take sintering of little particles, making cups, dishes, all that kind of stuff. That all uses huge amounts of energy. The biggest user of that is cement, right? We've done all the other ceramic materials. Cement is made in 3 billion tons. It gives us 8% of the total carbon burden of the universe, of this planet. It's a terrible industry from that viewpoint for energy, gouging, and putting out CO2. So we should be working on that. You can see clearly the path. The Japanese are already talking about huge steel plants working on solar energy, going to microwaves going directly to... This is not make-believe. This is being done at a hardcore engineering. So I'm saying, Randall, that we go from science to applied science to engineering, and that thing takes 3 to 5 years. We can prove that this is no malarkey because there it is with a small magnetic field of the microwaves changing matter in a completely new way to do it. So with the water, what do we hope out of water? I am seeing here bottles of tiny particles of silver, 1 part per million in water, which is a good antibiotic. It's now doing better on malaria than anything else has done. Here are applications of water. David pointed out that we are all water, we all know that stuff, but it means it's a universal vector for helping human health. That's one of the biggest applications. It's what it's going to do in human health. But it's beyond that. I mean, making water, there's a company here in Phoenix that's making new water, in microwaved water, and they're peddling it to say it's good for your complexion, it does all kinds of stuff, it is better for cement. How? How in the world can this be true? So we've got a health application, and we've got, which is the first one that we are seeing, a profound application worldwide now being manufactured here in Utah and being sent all over the world. By the way, the Russians are the biggest buyers. And then we see that water in applications in cleanup of water. All through the world, we need to clean up water. How are you going to clean that all up? You want to do it energetically conserving, and you want to do it to save the water, because water may become the most scarce commodity. And in Arizona, we don't need to be told that that's not too far off. So we should be cleaning up water, we should be using it for health, and those are all attainable in a new channel. It's no panacea. It's not going to solve all our problems because human selfishness beats us all. So I think we have real potential for many new applications way outside what we were thinking about before. And that's the challenge, to get the technical world and our political world. David pointed to Obama and Clinton and so on. The fact is that I've been doing science policy for 40 years. It's a very slow process to get it through. But the private sector, I think, can jump in here right now.
Okay, David?
I worked in helium-3 fusion for 10 years with MIT physicists, and I met Glenn Seaborg, who chaired the Atomic Energy Commission under Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, and people like Murray Gell-Mann, Bogdan Maglich, very, very major scientists. And Rustum Roy is right. Getting funding for new ideas is very difficult. And one of the great things about putting this kind of research in a film, if you can get the film viewed at the congressional level, and they can see this kind of research is going on, then there's a chance that some of the funding could get redirected. All the major efforts for nuclear fusion, like at Tokamak at Princeton and in Russia and the Tokamak project, I mean, billions and billions of dollars went into this very hopeful ideal that we were going to fuse deuterium and tritium. Tritium is actually radioactive hydrogen. There is still radioactivity in tritium fusion, but helium-3 was environmentally benign fusion, and we had private funding to get $26 million in private funding to build 4 prototypes over about 2 decades. And when we finally got to the final near proof of concept, it was tested by Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. Major General D. Lamberson did these computer feasibility studies on our particular approach to helium-3 fusion, and he found no reason for failure. In fact, NASA's James Fletcher went crazy over the results because 1 cubic meter of reaction space for deuterium and helium-3 could produce a gigawatt with a tiny, tiny amount of radiation, I mean less than your television set. And they were interested because it represented a miniature power source that they could use to power ion drives on satellites, et cetera, and the space stations. But Congress turned it down for the next stage of funding. And we couldn't get private funding because at the congressional level, we were blocked by, guess who? The oil companies. In fact, Royal Dutch Shell threatened my life on the phone when I was doing fundraising and said to stay away. The head of the Department of Energy Fusion program said that they turned down all the investors that I got that were interested in putting money in the company were turned away by Congress. So when research like this, that consciousness can affect water, that water has memory, some of the more sci-fi kind of stuff that I have in mind is, well, first, there's medicine. There's the idea of holistic health that is very inexpensive because you can restructure water in numerous different ways, very inexpensively, and possibly cure yourself of diseases, which works very similar to the principles of homeopathic medicine, which is vibrational medicine. And so that's number one. And then reclaiming environmentally polluted water areas. For example, in South America, all the big oil companies go in and they drill for oil and they leave the heads open and they gush oil into the rivers and the lakes and the streams and the swamps. And there was an experiment done in the movie Water where they were using a resonant device that was duplicating the vibration, apparently, of the human heart, I believe.
Right, where you see water and oil separate.
Where you see water and oil separating.
Right.
And now, if you can do that kind of stuff, you can reclaim a lot of the damaged, environmentally degraded areas of the planet where all of this oil drilling has been going on. And you can reclaim the water and separate it, and it can be used for drinking in a lot of these countries. I mean, over 2 billion people in the world do not have access to clean drinking and bathing water, according to the United Nations. So there are a lot of technologies that could come out of this, but the film needs to be seen at the congressional level. We need millions of Americans and Canadians and Europeans to see the film and start to clue into, because there's going to be Water 2 and 3, and the audiences will learn more and more with each progressive film, that they'll understand, where we need to direct funding. The idea that fusion, nuclear fusion, which has mostly been abandoned at the congressional level in the United States, and in fact, when I spoke in Congress in 1993, Al Gore was supposed to be there, and Harry Hamlin, the actor from L.A. Law, was with us, and he had personally invited Gore to the hearings. Half the panel was missing. We had Nobel Prize winners in our panel side of the argument that we wanted to, get more funding for these alternative approaches to fusion. And most of the panel were sitting up there half asleep when Nobel Prize winners are speaking. Al Gore isn't there. He doesn't know about helium-3 fusion. He doesn't know how far we've come with it. And we were turned down. And that happens because media doesn't cover these kind of stories very well. That is why documentary films like What the Bleep Do We Know, Water, and my new film, The Voice, these type of films become cult films in America because people are so excited. They're so hungry. Water makes learning exciting. It's when you see it, it's like you feel like a kid again. You feel like a kid the first time you were in a science class and you were discovering, human biology and the biology of insects, or just, cause and effect, how you can affect something scientifically. When I watch Water, I watch it, I've seen it almost 10 times now. I never get bored of it. There's that much information in the film. There's that much to learn from. So,
well, we're just about out of time here, everybody. I really thank all of you for being on the program today. Professor Rustum Roy has been with us, Melissa Henderson from Intention Media, and David, thanks very much for jumping in at the last minute here. And telling us this amazing story of this amazing film. Watch for it, waterthemovie.com. Everyone keep their eyes on that website, see when it's going to come to your town, and I'm sure at some point the film will be available on DVD, and that's the kind of thing we need to get out there into schools and lots of other places. So thanks everyone for being on the show today. Really appreciate your time. And that's a wrap for our show for this week. So join us again next week as we showcase the very best movie entertainment that inspires us towards positive change and honors the belief that simple choices can change the world. Of course, please tell your friends about where to find our program right here on seventhwavenetwork.com. And remember, you are the writer, producer, director, and star of your own movie that's called Your Life. So make it a blockbuster and it'll be a classic. Until next time, I'm Randall Libero for Spirit of Film Conversations. We'll see you next week.